Since 1983, FAME has helped business and education work for Maine. Contact the Authority, the Finance Authority of Maine.
Welcome. This is our Afterthoughts segment where we keep our guests around for some, from our broadcast show, for some additional conversation and to drill down a little bit deeper and get some good, candid, relaxed answers. You relaxed now? No. Good. It's good.
No.
That's good. Today with us we have Governor John Baldacci, and he's been good enough to stick around, and we're going to ask some more questions. You know, like I said, I had 17 pages of stuff I want to ask you, and of course we can't. So you said you want to come back.
Oh, I do. I'd like to, and I love the fact that you have the, I'm not running for anything, but I love the fact that you have the program and it's focused on that, because we don't give enough information in business about Maine businesses. So I think Mainebiz, I think the stuff on TV, the stuff that you folks do.
It's important. It is important.
You got to, because there's a lot of it that's out there, and you know, it doesn't get more than a section in the newspaper.
Okay, let's do some rapid stuff. Pine Tree Zones.
Yeah.
You started the Pine Tree Zone. That was one of your hallmark business programs, initiatives for tax cuts and reimbursements to businesses, especially manufacturing. You're going to talk about some of those numbers.
Yeah.
It started out, though, as a very targeted to those areas that need, I think there were 4 designated in the law, then 4 competitive districts.
Right.
I know because we wrote a grant for one of the applications.
Right.
And in the Mid-Coast. And, but now it's spread statewide.
Right.
What do you think about Pine Tree Zone? Was it successful, and what about going statewide?
First of all, Alan, the program, when we started it, I had people who came from Alabama to Pulp and Paper Foundation days up at the University of Maine, came up to me and made a point of telling me, this Pine Tree Zone program is the most aggressive economic development program they've seen in the country, and it competes better than anything they had down there. I said, well, I don't know if I wanted to advertise that, because when I got it through, it was done with an understanding that we were going to be leveling the playing field. But it did. It made us very aggressive on a national, international scale, because as I pointed out before, we have 309 companies now that are certified, 8,000 employees, over $341 million.
8,000 new employees as a result of
Pine Tree Zone expansion. We have over 8,000 employees, $341 million of annual payroll, and over $800 million of investment. People don't realize that. We don't advertise that enough. And I told them we've got to get more ambassadors out there in the Chambers of Commerce and the Rotary Clubs in Kiwanis who are actually talking to businesses about this program. It started out in the rural part of the state because I wanted to help the natural resource sectors to redevelop those areas with the manufacturing exodus, with the trade impacts, and the loss of outsourcing of jobs. So I wanted to be aggressive. We didn't have money in the till to do this, so we created a program that gave up on future tax revenue. So each of those 8,000 employees, their withholding tax is not held by the state, but it's actually given to the company so that they can keep good paying jobs and benefits in those regions, and they can use it as part of their financing. They get sales tax breaks and corporate tax breaks. And we started it in the northern eastern part of the state because that's where we're hardest hit. But as the economy continued through the recession, we've expanded it statewide. And the other one that we've added...
Was politics a part of that? Expanding it statewide. I mean,
well,
the idea
it wasn't politics.
More rural, to be able to compete with.
It wasn't politics because there were businesses that said, "Look, we want to open in Portland, or we want to open in York County. We want to build. We don't, necessarily want to go to Penobscot County or Androscoggin County or wherever. But we want to open in Maine." And so you had to make sure that you didn't have regions competing against each other. So what you have is that they can do particular types of Pine Tree Zone certifications in the rest of the state. So there's not a compete.
Okay. I wanted to ask you this too, because like I said, I have so many things to ask about, but plant closings. You personally and very directly intervene with many different plant closings. Is that the appropriate role for a governor? And tell me some successes and what you learned from that process.
Well, the first one was Millinocket and Great Northern's to bankruptcy the night of the inauguration. And I remember, because you never know whether to get into it or not, but I remember talking to former Governor King, and I asked him, about it, and he said to me, if you don't get involved, nobody else will. So I felt an obligation, because rather than just giving people unemployment and training or education, to go in there and fight. And what I found in that is that there really is a business plan out there for these places, but you just have to work with the right people, have the right plan. The financing will come, but where one door closes, truly one door opens.
So governors, do you have tools to be able to help with financing, to really say, look, what is it going to take to get you stay here?
Right, you've got the Finance Authority of Maine, you've got private lenders that are out there, but I think more importantly, you have a network that comes to you because you are the governor. It lands on your desk. So I have people who are expert in forestry. Rosaire Pelletier in forest products. He was a CFO for Fraser Paper. He's now been a consultant to us. And with Lincoln Paper turned around, and now over 400 people working, $20 million annual payroll, and now with Domtar reinvested and secure for the future, pulp and paper is and the forest products is a very important sector. So I think having people being a conduit, and frankly, I love business, and getting a right business plan together, and so that you're making the right whatever it is in the right market, so that you don't have to look back at this after you've done it. It's continuing to operate is the biggest form of satisfaction. I went up to Lincoln, and the people gave me a nice plaque and everything else, and I said the best time was when the workers come back to work and they get tears coming down their faces. I knew that my job was to make sure they had jobs, and I felt very rewarded in that experience.
Let me ask you about business attraction too. You've had some successes, and two-part question. Tell me about what your successes are, who were able to get here, and also give us some insider stuff now that you're going out. Who did we almost get in the boat but didn't quite get here?
Yeah, well, if I got to think about T-Mobile. I mean, when I sat down with T-Mobile and met with the executives, they didn't think there were enough people, 800 people. Right. They didn't think that there was an employment base. They didn't see it in Maine. I said, well, you don't understand. In Maine, if there's a good-paying job with benefits, people will move from where they are to that location because they really want to work in a good place with a good employer.
2 hours one way.
And the people don't realize that. So I think the labor market information which John Doerr has done in the Department of Labor and Law Enforcement, it's very handy. So now when we meet with Notify MD in Farmington, they're going to see the types of people and the quality of people, because I tried to get them to look at one location. They wanted to look at this location. Labor market information, very important and helpful to making these deals happen. I think the one, the political volleyball was the Jackson Laboratory.
I was just going to ask.
I think that, they clearly called me up and told me, Governor, this is something that we wanted to do. It's kind of like a branch of the organization. It helps us. It secures us. Maine isn't in competition for this. We're still going to grow in Maine. So please don't worry about it. It's nothing that you have to compete for. It's just something that they're laid at our doorsteps.
Did they say?
No, they didn't ask for anything. No, they didn't ask for it. But they didn't ask.
Okay.
But the reality is that they're continuing to expand there. So I think it was, unfortunately, it's like Forbes. It becomes part of political fodder in a political campaign, and it wouldn't have come otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. I want to ask kind of I don't know if it's a tough question or not, but let me ask you this. In the during the George W. Bush administration, it had Hurricane Katrina come through, and there was a question of the mishandling of that crisis, and then became a question of competency of his administration. So let me just ask this question. Was the mishandling of the DHS Medicaid financial system your Katrina? Did it have an impact?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think that I think it was, it could be likened to that.
What happened there?
Well, what happened is that they had been working on this for some time. Before I became governor, the underneath the underbelly of a bureaucracy had been working on this and thinking they had it all teed up well. And they said to me, they presented it to me, now we're ready to flip the switch. And they said, don't worry, Governor, because we got a backup plan in case the switch doesn't work. So
words to live by. Don't worry, Governor, is when you should really worry, right?
You all of a sudden dig into it a little bit deeper.